Hi, I'm Jim Sherraden. A lot of you know me as the guy from Hat Show Print, but I'm proud to say that I'm also the model for Poseidon at the frieze at the Parthenon, Alan LaQuire's Athena, and when he asked me to pose nude, this was over 40 years ago, and he said, you have to pose with no clothes on. I said, okay, I'll do it only if you're generous with the clay, Alan. So he could have been a little more generous there. I'm also the model for Jack Daniels at the distillery. And when he called a few years later to say Reba McEntire's father-in-law wants a statue, he's a church greeter at a Protestant church in Oklahoma, you want a model? I said, sure. And I hung up the phone and I was laughing. I said, I've gone from a Greek god to a Protestant church preacher. And Brad Vedder at Hatch came up to me and tapped me on the chest and said, you should just be happy they're calling you at all anymore, mister. Like, I'm also the author of 2 real books and 2 of my own books, Hat Show Print, and one of them I wrote with Alec. Alec is here. I know he's here. And the other one I wrote with Cellini. They're sitting next to each other. And then I put out a chapbook in 1983 and one about 10 years ago. Now I want to be known as the guy that makes the paper quilts, and this is going to be a quick overview. This is the shop when I discovered it in 1984. This is Hat Show Print. The address is 116 4th Avenue North. The Ryman Auditorium address, which I looked at abandoned for 8 years, is 116 5th Avenue North. So that gives you an idea of where we were. I walked into a mausoleum. It was the most beautiful place. How did I get there? I had a rinky-dink art show at a rinky-dink restaurant. I think it was one of Randy Rayburn's restaurants, and a teacher from Vanderbilt came and said, do you want to see this old dying show poster print shop before it goes out of business? And I said, what's a show poster? I had no idea, and she took me to Hatch. And I asked for the job, and I got the job of starting to build it back. So this is what I walked into. This is where we moved to Broadway, 1992 till 2013. One more move. But before that, the business started rolling in because we were the antithesis of digital design. So the big name clients started coming in. Springsteen, B.B. King, Ricky Skaggs, Emmylou Harris. And we had this plethora of type. That wall is 52 feet long. I think it's 12 feet tall. We've taken it to the new place, which is this building. We have been owned by the Country Music Hall of Fame. Hatch has been owned by the Country Music Hall of Fame since 1992, a gift from Gaylord. And we were not unfamiliar with working with them. I did the conservatory mural there in 2002. They asked us for a place where people could watch, and I can't tell you all the ideas that we went through, but we stayed with these windows, and anybody that works on these presses here, I promise you they get their picture taken more often than a dolphin trainer standing in front of that window. The shop is being run successfully for over 13 years by Cellini Aubrey. She's in that room. She will not want me to say anything. She has doubled the business, and I can't thank her enough, personally and professionally, for taking on this place and making it her own. That gave me a chance when I left the job of manager, stayed on as master printer to work with the restrikes. These beautiful blocks, 26 by 40, all carved before World War II. Vaudeville, circus, carnival, minstrel posters. They're still very special to me. It was my original passion to the shop. And that was the impetus for the monoprints that I started making, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. I finalized my time at Hatch working in the archives. We protected these boxes of history like the Irish monks did for the Viking invasions. And then finally, When the shop moved to the new place in 2013, they gave me the opportunity to unload all of this stuff. And I can't tell you how important that was to me. I never had a chance to look at this stuff because the phone was always ringing. Found some wonderful posters in there, such as this one. And they were not old when I started at Hatch, but they're old now. So along those lines, when I was doing that, I'd already started making the wooden quilts and the paper quilts, and that is the overview. So again, ask any questions at any time. I'm going to give you 3 themes of how I'm doing my work now. And the first one is balance of design found in nature. This is a picture of a long exposure of the stars, the Earth traveling around and around. Again, inspiration is balance of design found in nature. It could be the spider web, the beautiful colors of the butterflies, of the insects, my brother's iris. My brother's orchid. My brother's orchid. I'm sorry, Terry, in Tallahassee. Or the peacock that always finds me in my window when I visit the potato farm in Friesland. Balance of design found in nature could even be something that the water had washed into a rivet. Look at this. This is perfect. The arc of the top of the brick made way for this little hook here. Coptic textiles are always important to me, and this brings us into the second theme, individualization of utilitarian items. In other words, that's an academic way of saying what inspires the person who's making something. They don't have Seinfeld to watch, right? So every morning people wake up to make their saddlebag or make their tile or make their rugs or their carpets. What is their inspiration? It's the stars, it's the flora and fauna, of course, and it's nature. Nelson gets what I'm talking about because he's always walking around, and we've spoken about that before. Kurdistan, a beautiful set of quilts, just red and white. Again, beautiful quilts, individualization of utilitarian items. I snuck in a Josef Albers print there just because I think he's underestimated. This could be a perfect quilt. And a lot of people say, they come to my shows and they say, oh, you've just been to West Africa. I've just been to West Africa. You must be influenced by West Africa. Or someone will say, you've been to Cuba. I just came back from Cuba. Or you've been to Morocco. I've just been to Morocco. Your stuff just looks like it's come from Morocco. That must be an inspiration for you. But while I travel extensively, I've never been to any of those places. But what they all have in common is that individualization of utilitarian items based on the balance of design found in nature. You can't talk me out of that. They are all the same. There's this pattern work that goes on, which I think is universal, and time safe through the portals of time, so to speak. It will always be here. You will never see me carve a wood block of a dog on a park bench with a tree behind it. It's always going to have some symmetry to it. These are plates from the place where I go to in Friesland that I bought myself. Even the floor in the Kansas City airport, individualization of utilitarian items or manhole covers. Tiles from the Algarve in Portugal. And then the third, remembering what the first two were, balance of design found in nature. The second, individualization of utilitarian items. And now the third one, repurposing of items from their originally intended purpose. In other words, the stuff that's fallen to the floor, the stuff that you had on your chairs, what I'm going to do with that. My example here, of course, is going to be the dresses made from feed bags. Who knows of this phenomenon? There's enough of you that don't know. So very quickly, the Depression, feed bags, the folks who make the bags figure out that if they make patterns, that the folks sewing back home, the wife, the daughter, maybe the son, doubt if it's the dad, but when they go in to buy feed, the wife's going to give them patterns that they can buy the seed sack in, and then they can make dresses out of that. So this is a beautiful inspiration for me. Worthen bags right there in Germantown. And I love this picture. Self-promotion. And these are not inexpensive. These are all bought and sold on eBay. They're highly collectible. I also, how did I throw this slide in? I thought that was somewhere else in this talk. I thought I would be a musician in this town. Who didn't, right? I came to town because I wrote lyrics, and Waylon Jennings is lead guitarist. He brought me to town, and I did work for J.J. Cale, and I worked for Waylon Jennings. Fell in love with a Dutch girl. We moved to the Netherlands. This is me playing in a coffee shop called the Hippo, and the prices for the hashish are right outside of the picture. This is 1979, I think. But what happened over there is, I have no idea why, but I started drawing. I bought in a Paris flea market a souvenir pen and a box of nubs from some old office, maybe paid a franc for it, and some watercolor. So I started watercoloring the view from my bedroom window. So I'm saying that I was watercoloring almost 48 years ago, not just in the last 15 for the work in there. But I fell in love with printmaking because, in an effort to stay in the family will in 1980, Dad's an educator, brothers, doctors, lawyers, and then there's me waiting tables, and black sheep doesn't define it. In an effort to stay in the family will, I asked a perfect stranger what's easy, and I just want my degree, and he said, nah, I'm in printmaking, that seems pretty simple. So I went with him to printmaking class, and I fell in love with it. So this is me in 1981. My last musician, that's the original sketch. I did this in Norway because I did have a pretty good career as a lyric writer for a Scandinavian entertainer. That's the original print right there. There's a couple of them in there. So this is 44 years old, I think. And I did what anybody did at that time. I started selling them on the street. This is on 2nd Avenue outside of Charlie Fenton's place. And when I got the job at Hatch, I laid all of that down, and I turned all of my carving skills into work that would help bring the shop back. And not only did the clients bring work in like this, but some of them, like Chuck Creasy and Nelson Eddy's right here on the front row, they said, we need type for Jack Daniels. I said, okay, that'll be $3,000. They would say, well, we've got $6,000 in the budget. Why don't you just take the $6,000? Because they wanted that shop to survive also. So I'm putting my own career, my personal work down to start building the shop back, always with a great staff. But here's a couple of examples. The Emmylou, of course, at the Ryman and then the Kentucky State Fair. And I also started making monoprints. I think I really don't like this microphone. I got to the shop as a printmaker, not a printer. There's a big, big difference. I saw color, and I saw wildness, and I saw all of those old blocks and the depth of this history. And I started thinking how I can celebrate the depth of this. Oh, I'm standing in front of the I really don't like that microphone. I feel so much better without it. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. I'm a changed person. Wow. All right. Printmaker is not a printer. Now, I had a mentor, Kenneth Hinson. He died in 2000. He taught me how to typeset and typeset correctly. So I didn't go straight from art school to abstract sculpture. I learned, I learned how to paint in printer's terms. I learned how to paint the apples and do the nude studies and all of that. I learned correctly, but I always saw the potential for these blocks, and I started carving my own based on the archive. So this Hank Williams I carved for the Ryman Auditorium in 1996 when they had Lost Highway, the production for the Hank Williams musical. They still had a paper marquee out front, so I carved the blocks, of course, find the type. And then this is for Patsy Cline. When the Ryman was rebuilt, 1994, the first poster, the photo plate, the second one, again for the marquee in front, 3-sheet, was a carving that I made. So this is one of my Patsy Cline modern prints, the Bill Monroe. One of my favorite pieces to make is the Bill Monroe. And also, this is a way to celebrate the shop and the shop's archive, and to bring all of these old blocks out of the hiding, always books on the wall, and give them a contemporary context. The topography, of course, speaks for itself. The paper quilt. I was always impressed with the delicate manner by which Mr. Hatch carved his eyes, the mouths, the shoes, the facial features on these pre-World War II wood blocks. In 2003, I recut all the eyes, resized them, and started making eyes of Hatch. Do the eyes, why not the mouths of Hatch? So I got the eyes there, and since let's go all the way to the floor, I did the shoes of Hatch there. And this is one of my presentations at Art Collecting about 10 years ago. And why I'm showing you this is I had let's call it a health scare around 2002. Just about jumped the key room myself. And when I got better, I started looking at all of this pre-Hatch work that I did, all black and white. I remember Christy at MTSU, she drew me a color wheel. I had no idea in 1980 what a color wheel was. Learned it at Hatch, so I start looking at my old stuff, all black and white, and at these shows I would slip them in at the bottom, of the presentation. And people started buying them, and I thought, well, maybe there's some merit in this work that I did past the work that I did at Hatch, even though the Library of Congress was taking it. They got this one here, and I thought I'm going to start not only carving my own blocks while I'm doing the work at Hatch, the modern prints, this one being the very first, well, the only multi-dimensional paper quilt that I've done, wooden quilt in this context. I'm going to start carving my own blocks. Now you're going to say, how can you carve your own blocks and then cut them and then put those, carve the blocks, print them, and cut them into pieces, quilt-like to those of your own design? And the answer is because at the shop, you're always cutting your poster up. If the J in Johnny Cash doesn't print, but the rest of the word does, you take the J off the paper from the previous one, you put it on the wood block, and you carve it. And so I just got this photo done a few weeks ago. Jackson took it for me. All those years that I was at the shop, it was the back of the form that I thought was so beautiful. And I'm going to go forward. So this is the type, and thank you, Selene, for letting me take this picture and throwing it in there. This is the type for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? I think it's the 25th anniversary. This is what the printer sees, right? Jennifer's typeset or printed it, but that's the back of it. This is the front, that's the back. So I'm seeing all of this stuff for 34 years. And so does this kind of give you an idea of why I'm cutting my own work up and making all of my paper quilts like this? I've always wanted a slide like this in the presentation. I think I could get no magazine, the Southern Livings, the Condé Nast Travelers, the Garden Guns, no one wanted to take a picture of this. And while it's a poor picture, it gives you an idea. right, of how much work not only goes into a hatch poster, but how I could be influenced by this year after year. As I said, I started carving my own blocks. I started feeling better, literally, figuratively, personally, spiritually. This is the very first one I recut, 2005. A guy called, the hatch book was out, and he said, I worked for Procter & Gamble in Cuba, pre-Castro. And I love the wallpaper down there. So I asked about it. They said it's all cut with wood blocks printed, and I've got all of these blocks. So I bought them. This guy from Cincinnati that worked for Procter & Gamble, he didn't want them, so he sold them to me. So I tried all of this time to figure out what I was going to do with these blocks, because there was no imagery with it. It was like a secondary block, and in this case it was just these dots around here. So I tried abstract, I tried all this, tried all that, and then I thought, why don't I just print it and then see what my eyes see and then build the wood block around these dots. So that's exactly what this series is intended to do, how I got started. This is another one, same thing. All I got was some blocks, and they're like those Indian blocks that we see, right? With the handle, stamp, 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 the textile. So I didn't know what the original intended purpose was for those blocks, so I started carving around them. As you can see, remember the last musician, black and white, the guy under the tree? Now my art is much more influenced by the hatch work, the work that I did at the print shop. Justification of information left to right, top to bottom. That's what makes a good hatch poster. Same thing for here. Even though it's all imagery, it's justification of information left to right, top to bottom. There's a balance and there's a symmetry to it. Along those months that I started carving these blocks, friends of mine, Hart and Russell, said, we got these extra wood blocks, we built this studio buffer. Do you want these blocks? They're 3.5 inches tall, or 3.5 inches left, right, top to bottom, different heights. And I thought, what am I going to do with these? And then I thought, I'm going to cut my own blocks up. And this is how I got started with the wooden quilts. I'm on year 14 of making these. And then they said, we're done with the Peabody Marriott in Little Rock, Arkansas. Do you want those blocks? And they're 5 by 5. And I said, I'll take them. So I started making larger wooden quilts. And what happens when you make these, you have what I call that which falls to the floor. Literally, it has fallen to the floor. So I have leftover artwork from making those paper quilt, or those wooden quilts. So what am I going to do with that? I was throwing them away, and then a buddy of mine in a band called Chatham County Line, Raleigh, North Carolina, I called them fish bones. He said, can I have some of your fish bones? And I thought, what am I missing with this? And Jennifer here on the front row, it never occurred to me to make paper quilts from them, because I was making the wooden quilts, and you as a quilter would understand that. So I've got all of this left over, and I thought, I got to start making my own paper quilts. So this is the very first one. I'm up to 177. This is number 1. I did this in Norway because I started traveling, and I started traveling a lot after I got out of Hatch, but this was a break. I did this on a little hillside in the Norwegian fjords on the west coast. And you're saying, well, how did you get it home, Jim? This is 40 by 40. If you see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6 tiles, 6 by 6 tiles. So I assembled it back home, but I did all of the work over there in Scandinavia. And then I would, take them on the flight with me. Same thing with this one. This is a tumbling block. This is number 13. And the way I make them, this one that you just saw is handmade. This one I thought I better get a die cut so I can use a printing press. This piece on the bottom here are sharp blades. Press the paper into it. The tumbling block images come out, and then they allow me to assemble them, as you can see here. Great value in negative space. Most people think, what architects, what I'm going to do all this negative space. For me, it's a joy because it gives the eye a break. So I can color all that negative space, and it'll slow you down from looking at the quilts on steroids, right, that I'm making. As you can see here, a little closer, and finally the piece again. Watercolor, brushes, and glue. That's what I spend all day with these days, making them. Here I am making the border, big value of borders. Now we're going to hurry the slide up. Or the talk up. I'm going to show you how I make some of these. So this is a Kandinsky. This is not the one that's in there, but it's very close to it. So you can see where I made my lines, dropped in the black paper, glued it in. Now I have my border, so I start cutting up my own work, dropping them in there. Almost done. Final. Let's do this one. This is, I think, in Zion, Illinois. So this is 9 sections. Let's go back. See all that negative space in the centerpiece? Great value in that. Color it, start assembling, and there's the final piece. Giving some ideas. This is called attic window. I love quilts, I love quilt patterns. I know this was called attic window. This is in an endocrinologist's office in Jackson, Mississippi. And here I am working on one of my harbors. I sell a lot of these harbors. There's only one, there's 2 of them here. So this is one that I'm making. And now I'm going to put one together for you. This one is owned by the state of Florida, their runaway services. If you're a kid and you run away from home, safe place to come. They wanted artwork that resembled a house but was kind of warm and non-threatening. That's it, black and white. This is probably 30 left to right, 26, 27 top to bottom. Sorry. Thank you, Vincent. Another paper quilt. This is a 2-sheet. This is not assembled in the picture. The first one I sold, I have another one out at the house under the carpet from the fireplace for a larger show. It's 52 left to right, 40 top to bottom. And all this time, I'm still making the monoprints, and then the Temple Hilton downtown on 8th Avenue calls and says, can we license your Eyes of Hatch for the chairs in our private space? So I'm doing stuff like this. I think the theme as we wind up this talk is, and we're doing good, is what am I doing besides the paper quilts? Well, there's pillows now. All of these sold out through the Hall of Fame. I'm making ceramic tiles, or people are making ceramic tiles for me. Cassis Pittman is doing this. I think these are just great. I don't care if I sell them or not. I just love to see my tiles there. I know that this is an Airbnb in East Nashville. I'm working with Nashville Tile and Interiors on this. I have a line of active wear. I'm surprised I'm not red in the face when I say this. Remember the Dutch girl I fell in love with? Well, her daughter grew up and calls 6 years ago and says, I think your art would look great as active wear. And I said, go for it. So this is a swimming suit of my artwork. She has sold almost 1,500 pieces of Jim art. We call it Jim. And this is here in Nashville. This is a jacket of my artwork. I got this great commission for a place called Harkin Hall in Madison. They asked me to create artwork for the pre-entertainment room space. So this is the main piece. This is 200 pounds, it's 7 feet left to right, top to bottom. Now it's way up high on the wall. Loved doing this. And I also volunteer at a place called Friends Life on Granny White. And I got in there about 3.5 years ago. I was working. This was during the pandemic, and believe me, I am no angel. But I didn't want to just pace the floor. What can I do? Angry at this and that. And I went to this food bank called Little Pantry That Could in Bordeaux, and I circled it like a alcoholic circles in an AA meeting, and I thought, okay, just go in. And she said, yeah, we'll start tomorrow. So I was the box cutter because it was during COVID. I wanted to be outside, and those boxes flew out of there faster than rats from a cat factory. Let me say my joke again. I'm outside cutting boxes that came flying out of that place faster than rats from a cat factory. Yes, that's it. That's my joke. Real estate values, closed that place down. A couple named Will and Sharon Cheek, they border on patron status. She says, have you ever heard of Friends Life? And I said, what's Friends Life? And she said, well, it's this place for adults with developmental disabilities. And I went over there. And I liked it, but I did not love it because it wasn't physical enough for me. I wanted to break a sweat. I wanted to lay down on the kitchen floor when I got done. And this was more cerebral. And what happened was I fell in love with this place. I just fell in love with it. And it's one of the joys of my life to go in there. I work with different people. Jennifer, might as well raise your hand. I work with Jennifer there at Friends Life. My friend Grant is right there. Hi, Grant. This is one of Grant's shirts. That's it. I only put 2 slides in, and this piece is from Hal. So what do I do? I'm trying to do this correctly. There are some artists in there, some friends whose line structure has the integrity of master painters, master drawers. My friend Grant right there is one of them. And he was drawing all of this stuff with Sharpie art, and I'm thinking, we can elevate this into something better. So I started redrawing exactly what Grant drew, carved it out of a block, and we printed together. We printed yesterday together. So this gives this artwork a whole new life, and it's prints, so you can make a lot of them. Same thing with Hal here. This was for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, the hockey team.
For the hockey team.
Which I think are Preds.
Yeah, they're so Hal, Grant works like fast as anything I've ever seen. Hal takes his time, but he drew this catfish. And I said, we're carving this catfish. So this is a 12 by 12 inch block. And this one, what I do is Grant, sorry you're here, I'm talking at you, with you. But Grant has this plaid shirt that is so beautiful that I carved it 23 left, right, 30 top to bottom. And he makes all the colors, all of these. And then I thought, I'm just going to draw the outline of the plaid shirt like a stencil, drop it down on another sheet of paper. He has these great ink pens that his dad buys him, and we just do them together. He says, what's next? What's next? And we talk about the color. And I think this is fantastic. This is only 8 inches by 10 inches, but it's fantastic. And they're all one of a kind. So everyone says, thanks, Jim, for going to Friends Life. It's the other way around. Thanks, Friends Life, for letting me in. And after 1.5 years, they decided to do a background check on me. And and her name was Camille, and I think I passed it, I'm still there. When I went in there, I said, "You got the background check, Camille?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "I just want you to know I'm proud of every one of those arrests in the 1980s. Closing the place up now. I work with a guy named John Langford. He's a well-known singer, Mecon's Waco Brothers. He was the very first visiting artist at Hatcho Print. Cellini is now running the place. We've just moved into the new building. I'm staying on as master printer. And this is in conjunction with the Dylan Cash exhibit. John did all the artwork for the Dylan Cash exhibit, and they want me to work with John on doing a piece of art for the gallery. We get permission from Dylan's manager to typeset Girl from the North Country. So this is the piece. And Jordan, that's the original woodblocks with the piece that you're buying. This is the original context for it. We sold every one of these. I can't remember. I think we made 25 of them. Sold them out in 6 weeks. The next work was John just doing line art, giving it to me. I'm still busy at Hatch, and so I used the archive to create one-of-a-kind monoprints from that work. And then Bob Delavandi comes out and says, "We're taking pictures for your show in New Orleans." And at home I wear a jaleba, whatever, however you want to say it. This black hooded thing is what I live in at my house in Whites Creek. John's working, looking like me, and Bob says, "I wish you had another jaleba." I said, "I have 5 of them upstairs." So I went up and put on my blue one, and John put on my black one, and Bob, being the good Catholic that he is, he's taking the picture. He says, "My God, I feel like I should be blessed by both of you." And Langford goes up and says, "I am Father Drogo." And out of my words came, "And I am Bishop Biscuit." So for 5 years, we went on the road as Father Drogo and Bishop Biscuit. And we've done some really good stuff together. We still are. There's 3, maybe 4 pieces in there. So he gives me the artwork. It's always on art paper, 16 by 24. And I cut that out. I know what I want to do. And then I start building the piece out with my own woodcuts. Very good example. And to show you how similar the images might be, the colors are different, and so can the artwork. This is me building this piece that I just showed you. Yes, that is a plate from the kitchen. Another nice piece. He gives me this boxer, the rabbit, I know exactly what I want to do. You see the 12, 3, 6, and 9. So we mail this stuff back and forth, or he visits me and we pass it back and forth like monks in a monastery. But for the numbers, I mailed them to him. I said, "This is what I want. I need you to draw me these numbers." And that's what he did. So you can see how we don't have to be in the same room. It helps. It works because we're the same age. I'm 68 and a half, he's 68 and a half. It works because we both have one foot in Northern Europe. He's from Wales. I go to the Netherlands, Norway all the time. It works because we both have had ups and downs in the music career. There is absolutely no ego to this. And everybody says, "Well, how can you collaborate as artists?" And I say, it's easy. Musicians do it every day, right? We buy their music, these collaborations. So the bass player can't say, "I want my bass loudest," right? It's a communicative effort, and that's why John and I are able to get so much work done here. I did bring a couple of small pieces. I think I'm going to show you that. So this is one of my favorite pieces. She Knows He Has a Rope is what it's called. Ken Levitan bought that piece. John will go on the road, and like Hank Williams, Flat and Scrub, like everybody, they made extra money selling songbooks for photos in between sets. John does that with artwork. He sells for $100 to $300. I said, "Man, we got to do that now with our own stuff." So the best imagery, I had plates made, magnesium plates, as if they were going to be printed at Hatch. Same way that Hatch prints them, so we can reduce down to get our work and give them to the folks at a decent price. So this is the Raven. I know I brought 2 of those here. We just sold this one, but there's 2 more. I call this the Portrait Series. The Jim John Birds, there's 1 left in there. And then we get the opportunity this fall in 2025 to go to the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. And we're on the phone, it's a Zoom call, and John and I can talk with, for, and around each other. And I said, John, here's what we're going to do. You give me 2 portraits of William Faulkner, and we're going to build paper quilts around them. And that's what we did. The students loved it. We did these in 8 hours. So I brought all of the stuff. Langford has the images. This is the finished piece. That's the center of another finished piece. And closing out the program, 4 my inspirations. Howard Finster, the outsider artist. Henry Vakman, he was breaking the rules of letterpress. He's a Dutchman, decades before I was putting ink directly on with a brayer onto paper or anybody else. Walter Anderson, of course, and Minnie Evans. You can see their influence in my paper quilts. 140. Tribute to Augustin Lesage, the French outsider artist. Almost done. This is my closing slide. I've never put this in a slide, in a presentation. You can read what it is. This is a cross-section of DNA strand. Please think about this. We are all connected. Regardless of the politics, regardless of income, we are all connected. Look at this beautiful thing. This is in every one of us. We choose to kill still, and it isn't going away. Maybe we will evolve past that, knowing how we are all connected. So thank you for your time, and thanks for letting me get this checked out.